get my notes open. Sorry. So, do you guys want to know a secret of mine? It was back in February of 2020 when I found out I have a secret ability. Now, this secret ability came from sheer grit and determination, and it's not for the weak, all right? All of my training, all of my heart and soul went into this moment. My ability showed up in a Fazoli's. And when I knew when the breadsticks hit the table that it was my time to shine. So I grabbed my first breadstick and I engulfed it in one bite. And here's the video from my beautiful moment. Yes. I know. Impressive, right? It's the best moment of my career. And I want you all to know, all right, that I didn't do this with one breadstick at night. I didn't do it with 2 breadsticks at night. No, I did that with 5 breadsticks at night. Yeah! And I want you to know that a couple months after that, I did find out I was gluten intolerant. But did that stop me from doing it again multiple times? So, we all love bread. We've all had it at some point, and maybe you're not like me and you engulf it like a starving bird, but you've had it. And so it's like this universal food that's all around the world, in all cultures. And so bread can be as simple as making it with oil and flour. It can be as simple as making it with wheat or rye. You can get crazy and make some fruit in there, maybe some seeds or nuts. Heck, you can even put seasoning on that stuff. It's awesome. It can be used in all kinds of different ways, from rolls to sandwiches to toast. You name it, bread can do it, all right? Bread is one of the most basic foods and is known and loved across the whole world. That's why I find it interesting when the Lord's Prayer in Matthew 6, 7 through 13, in verse 11, we get this phrase, "Give us today our daily bread." We've been going bit by bit dissecting what the Lord's Prayer is throughout the past 2 weeks. And first we learned that God is our Father in heaven. And He's holy, yet He's available to us. And then we learned about how God's kingdom is coming and how His will is going to be done on earth as it is in heaven. And now we arrive here. Give us today our daily bread. And it's a shift in the prayer almost, because we shift from focusing on God's glory to the petitions of God's people, cries of help from the mouths of His children. And this is the first call of help, which is what we'll be focusing on tonight, which is asking God to provide for our needs. This call of help, give us today our daily bread, is a little foreign to us. We look at the word bread in there and we kind of raise our eyebrows a little bit, and we're like, really, Jesus? You're seriously asking me to ask for bread? And not only that, you're asking me to ask for bread, and you're telling me I need to ask for it every day. Like, I can't just go to the supermarket and buy a loaf of bread for $2. And we see the word bread, and it's almost like we can't fathom that something so simple must come from the hand of God. So we try to change it up a bit, and instead of bread, let's ask for the meatier stuff on our prayer list. And, Steak. Yeah, we try to skip to the steak before we have our bread. And so our requests becoming so complex, and we can completely shrug off the concept of bread for things that we think are more important. Don't misunderstand me. I do think it's important that we come to God with all of our needs, but I don't think we should shrug off the concept of praying for literal bread either. I wanted to be absolutely sure that Jesus was telling us to pray for literal bread. And so I researched the verse and decided to check the original Greek word for bread in verse 11. to make sure that Jesus is really telling us to ask for literal bread. In the Greek text, the word for bread is artos. Say artos. Artos. Now say it like a Greek, artos. Artos. Yes. You guys would have done great in Greece. So this word, artos, can have two meanings. It can mean literal bread, or it can mean food of any kind. So the concept still stands of what Jesus is teaching us here, that one of our most basic needs, which is food, must come from the hand of the Lord, whether it's literal bread or literal food. It is a call to trust God it's a call to trust God with something that we need to live. And it's a call to humility in realizing that we can't even provide a slice of bread for ourselves. When we ask for literal bread or food, we're giving up our independence and pride to instead depend on our good Father. It's like we're literally handing over our lives to God and saying, I trust you so much that I'm willing to live day to day on the food and bread that you provide me with. And by God's love and grace, He will. It's by God's love and spirit that when you come home from school, you have food on the dinner table for you. And it's by God's love and care that the Rogers Small Group provided a meal for you all to eat tonight. And it's by God's infinite wisdom and creativity that He even created the tractors that harvest wheat to make flour to produce bread in the first place. As we trace back where the food or bread came from, we ultimately find that it was God's hand all along with His creativity, goodness, and love woven in. God Himself created the taste, texture, and the look of all foods. He's the creator of it all, and that alone makes Him worthy to be the provider of it. So yes, pray for literal bread or food and do so thoughtfully, not rushing along to the next request, but rather sit down, relax, and thank God for His provision and thoughtfulness in providing for one of our basic needs to live. And on a more practical note, as you go out this week, in the mornings, just pray the Lord's Prayer. And every time you get a snack or a meal, just pray to God and tell Him thank you for His provision. And now that we understand that God can provide us with even a slice of bread, we can now recognize that He can provide all that we need. When we know that we can rely on Him for bread, we know that we can rely on Him for all that life requires. In Psalm 34:10, it says, "The lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing." When we seek the Lord and come before Him with our needs, we lack no good thing. God is so good that He not only provides for our most basic needs, but rather He sits with us, attentively listening as we pour out our heart to Him. He listens to us as we cry for help, and He listens to us as we joyfully tell Him that we want to know more about Him and serve Him. And He even listens as we casually sit with Him, telling Him our little needs throughout the day. He knows our needs of our heart, and He picks them up, and He holds them dear, and He says, "Now what do I do with this?" I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath. And think about a peaceful place that you like to go to. It might be a coffee shop you like. It could be your bedroom. It could be a field or creek that you like to sit next to. Anywhere, really. Now imagine Jesus walking up and sitting across or beside you. He looks at you and He asks, "Hey, friend, what do you need from me?" What would you feel if Jesus asked you that? Would it be shock, love, confusion, joy? Now, He asks again, "My friend, what do you need from me?" I want you to hold out your hands and imagine whatever you're needing, whether it be a word or a material thing or a situation. Imagine that being in your hands. And then, as you imagine that, imagine yourself giving it over to Jesus, handing it to him. And he gently grabs it, and he holds it dear, and he says, I will take care of this for you. You can open your eyes now. What you just did took a lot of faith. It takes courage to hand over our needs to God. It takes courage to know and trust that he will take care of it for you. It is by the hand of the Lord that everything we need is taken care of, and he makes it good. And we know that we can trust God to take care of our needs because he's been doing it all of our lives with his care and love. We could look at every part of our lives and see how God has been providing for us. We can see it in the clothes we wear, or the shoes we have on our feet. We can see it in the strength he gives us every day to get up, and even in the way that he makes your neurons connect in your brain so that you can answer questions on a text or talk to your friends. God is good, and he takes care of our needs when we hand them over to him. But we must understand that when we hand over our needs to him, we no longer have control of how they're taken care of. When we hand our needs over to him, he will provide in his way and his will. And I'll be honest with you, it's easier for me to hand over my needs to God and pray for literal bread than actually wait for him to do it. There are times where I feel like I'm handing my needs over to him, when in reality, I look like this. That cat is nuts. Who sometimes feels like that cat, just in general? I feel like that cat all the time. Yeah, I look like that. So it's like when I hand over my needs to God, I just try to take it back into my own hands, or I guess like this cat, I try to take it back with my teeth. And I hand my needs over to God, yet when he doesn't do what I expect him to, I worry. This became especially apparent in my life when, back in March, my mom was told that she was going to have a second spine surgery. So now my mom had been dealing with 5 discs in her neck that were kind of popped out, collapsing for 7 years. And 4 years ago, she had gotten a surgery that had fixed 3 of them. And it fused, the surgeon had put an implant in and fused the bones and stuff. And so she was good for a while. But then she slowly started to get worse again. And it kept getting worse until her surgeon had told her back in March that she had to get a second surgery because her vertebrae had collapsed and it was going into her spinal cord almost. And so I remember when I found out, and I was upset, and I tried to hand the surgery over to God and trust that he would take care of her, but another part of me was just angry and upset, and I didn't want to hand it over to God because I wanted to fix it myself. I asked him, I was like, why can't you just heal her? Why does she have to go through this again? I remember me and my mom used to sit on the floor praying for healing. I would put my hands on her spine and I would pray for her that he healed, and she just wouldn't be. And I was so upset. And I just didn't understand why she had to go through another surgery when she had been so faithful to him. And she believed that he could heal her. But what I didn't realize is that he did heal her. It just wasn't in the way I wanted it to be. I saw God provide her with hope on days when it got hard. I saw God provide her with strength when the pain in her neck was at its worst. And I saw God provide a smart spine surgeon and kind nurses to take care of her. And I saw God provide friends to walk alongside her and pray for her. And I saw God provide her with peace and kindness when she had to go in for her surgery. And I saw God give the spine surgeon the ability to even fix my mom's spine. And God healed her by providing everything she needed so that she could go for the surgery and it be successful. He healed her this way so that her glory, that his glory could shine through her, and so she could impact those around her with the love of Christ. I got to see God work in my mom's life because he provided for her in his way and his will and not mine. We look back up to verse 8, and we even see before Jesus teaches the Lord's Prayer, he says to the people, "Do not be like them, for your Father in heaven knows what you need before you ask him." We ought to hand our needs fully over to God, trusting that he knows already how to provide for them. He already knows what we need and how for our sake to take care of them. He will provide for our needs to showcase his love and his glory so that we may know him and show him to others. Maybe it looks like this for you. You're a freshman in high school and you've been having a rough month. Ever since school started, it seems like nothing's going your way. You walk the halls and they're crowded, but you feel lonely. You haven't found a good friend yet, and so much so that when group projects come up in classes, you get so anxious not knowing who you're going to be paired up with. You just would really like a friend to hang out with, to eat lunch with. And so that night, when you're going to bed, you pray to God and you ask him to provide a friend for you. And you wait, and it's about a week. The school week ends, and you've tried all week to make friends, but you just keep failing. And so you start to get upset. It's Saturday, and you're confused because you ask God to give you a friend, and it seems like he's not helping at all. And then as the weekend goes by and you start school on Monday again, you go throughout your day, still making no friends. And then when you go to lunch, you go through the line, and you're going to the table you usually sit at alone, but somebody's there. And you get nervous for a second because last week you couldn't make any friends and you don't know who this person is, and you're about to bolt and just go eat lunch in the bathroom. When you think to yourself, maybe I should pray about this. So you pray for peace and to have a good conversation with this person at your table. So you sit down and you talk, and it's really good actually, and you guys start to hang out over the next couple of days and sit at lunch together, and you realize that God did provide a friend for you. He gave you peace when you were nervous to go over there. He gave you opportunities to get to know this person better, and he provided the blessing all along to just have a friend. Or maybe it looks like this. You're an overachiever. You're in every sport and club that your school can offer. You're even in honors classes. It seems like if you're not sleeping, you are busy. And you've been doing this for a while, and it's starting to get draining. And so you come to church on Sunday, and you hear them sing and worship this lyric, I've got joy in chaos, I've got peace that makes no sense. And you wonder if that's really true, because right now your life feels like chaos. So you bring your need, you bring your prayer before God, and you ask him to give you peace, to give you rest, and to give you joy. And so after a few days, you come to youth group, and you hear about this opportunity to go to this fall camp. And you get excited. It sounds like fun, and it sounds like a good opportunity to get away from the busyness in your life, but then you remember that weekend. That's the weekend you have a game for one of the many sports teams you're on. And you just got a starting spot on the team, and you don't want to lose it. It's not an important game by any means, but if you don't show up, you might lose your starting spot. So you shrug off the fall camp. You're like, I'll just go another time. But over the next couple of days, God keeps tugging on your heart to go to this fall camp. So much so that you get sick of it. And you say, okay, God, I'm going to trust you on this. I'll go. I'll sign up. And you go. And God provides when you're there. You play games and you laugh, and the most you have in a while. You go to small groups and you have some of the most refreshing conversations that you've had in months. And you get to rest outside and experience God's creation in a new way. And most importantly, you have the most peace that you've had in months. You trusted God even though he provided in a way that you didn't expect. And you're kind of thankful for his provision. Actually, very thankful. You are able to come home with renewed energy and a new way to know how to rest in God. It is only when we can fully hand over all of our needs to God that we can see His hand and all that He provides. If there's one thing I want you to remember from this sermon, it's this: all that we need comes from the hand of God. All the good in our lives has come from God's grace, and all that we have is God's, from the smallest slice of bread to our abilities to our salvation in Christ. It is through God's provision that we have the strength to get up each morning, that we have peace in chaos, that we have words to say when we don't know what to say, that we have community inside and outside these walls, that we have rest when we can't fall asleep at night, that we have paper and pencils to write math equations, draw pictures, and write letters to loved ones, that we have books to read for both fun and school, that we have the energy to play sports, that we can rejoice in suffering, and that we have protection from the evil one. It is through God's provision that He heals the sick, that He brings comfort in moments of pain, and that He has stored up grace for us all, that He gives us joy, and that He guides us when we don't know where to go, that He gave us His word so that we may know Him, and that He provides light in the darkness. It is through God's provision that our shame turns into honor, that we have a future, that we have courage to fight for justice, that we have compassion on those who need it, that we can have no fear in the scariest of situations. It is through God's provision that He sent His Son to this earth for us, and it is through God's provision that He sent that same Son to die on a cross to forgive us for our sins. It is through God's provision that that same Son rose from the dead so that He may breathe His Spirit into us. It is through God's provision that we now have a Spirit who advocates and listens to us. It is through God's provision that we receive blessings so that we may bless others, and it's through God's provision that we can go throughout the whole world and share the gospel of Christ. And it truly is through God's provision that we even have a slice of bread in our hands. So yes, all that we need is provided by the hand of God. So yes, give us today our daily bread. And so we're going to celebrate that. We're going to have a time of communion because Jesus is our bread of life and that He gave His blood for us. It seems as though throughout the Gospels, Jesus has woven His image into bread through the feeding of the 5,000 to the road to Emmaus, from the bread of life. Even the place He was born, Bethlehem, is called the house of bread. And so we should celebrate that because God not only gives us this earthly bread, but He gives us the bread of life, which is Christ. And so, leaders, if you would like to go grab communion for your groups, you guys will meet in a place where you guys can take communion together.